Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to my talk. And I want to talk to you about state management and specifically how we can make it easier for ourselves if we have complex app with many features and how to keep it tidy as it grows. I'm Piotr. I've been developing in Flutter since 2021. As Mati said, I'm a fan of functional programming. And in my spare time, I like learning foreign languages. Currently, I'm learning Japanese. So what's the case? Every app needs some kind of state management uh, because our app needs to be dynamic, needs to update in real time, needs to interact with the user, and this is kind of those like fetch, add, remove are features that most apps have, that most apps need to implement in their code, and that the users expect. But this is just a very simple case, a very simple qubit. What if it grows over time? There are more and more features, uh, and we might end up with states that are just a long list of properties, different settings, different use cases, and as we code new features, we want to add more and more and more, but we still want to somehow manage it easily and as easily as it was when we started developing our app. Um, so, what do I want to actually do with the state of my app? State is composed of values, and what can I do with the values? I want to get the value, I want to know what it is so that I can display it in the user interface, and I want to set it to something new. It can be from user interaction, user typed something, clicked on something, opened a new page, or it can be done automatically from a backend, whatever you have. But those are the two features that I really want in my app and pretty much get me everything that I have, that I need. For example, to manage font size in the app, I might want to check that it's 12. A user clicks, I want a bigger font size, so I call set, and from now on, the font size is 16. Looks pretty simple, and it should be simple. Similarly, another setting for dark mode, very fancy option and very convenient these days. Again, I want to set the value and I want to set it to true, set it to false, and I want everything to update automatically. So where do these get and set methods come from? This is what's called lenses. It's an analogy to a magnifying glass that allow you to simply look at one specific thing at a time. And this is the connection to functional programming because it originated in that word over there, functional lenses. And there are a lot of optical analogies in that word. Here, the most important one is called lens. And again, I don't want to always keep track of everything in the app because if I have like 50 settings, I don't really care about 50 settings at a time. I just want to set dark mode to true or set dark mode to false. So that's what lenses allow me to do. They just give me an opportunity to know what the dark mode is, and they allow me to change it. So this led to the creation of one basic class. It's called lens base, and those are the two methods in that class that I showcased you before. I want to get a value and I want to set it to something else. But okay, I can set a value. It works for everything, any object, any type you might ever dream of. But sometimes certain use cases might want to have it even simpler. That's why what else do I want to do with my state in the app? For example, a lot of properties are numbers. For example, font size, some kind of scaling, maybe refresh rate, maybe how many articles to load. All those are numbers, and besides of just getting the value and setting the value, it's very common that the user just wants to go up and go down. That's why I might want to have something called increment, and in the other way, decrement, because they just simplify working with these values even further. So what other types I might want to have in my state? Lists. A user might want to have a list of favorites, a list of items in their cart, a list of books they want to read, and I want to manage this list just as easily. And our new package also allows working with such values. They allow you to focus on not only just a list, but on a specific item in that list. And when you again set and get values on that item, everything else around it updates automatically, and the new list gets propagated throughout the app, and the user sees their new favorites, the user sees their new book they want to read, and so on and so forth. Another type that I mentioned before are on-off values. They can be switches, checkboxes, stuff like that. And the type of interaction that users do with these toggles are called toggle. They just want to switch between true and false. They don't want to say explicitly, I want to have it on or off. I just want to set it to the opposite. So that's what toggle does. They're just all convenience functions to simplify it even further and to not really care what the current value is. They just want to move from one to another. Those are some of the helpers that allow you to work with these types. For Boolean values, there's a booleanance that has this toggle, and it just tells the user, I just want the opposite. Another one is a number length with the increment, decrement, and step. It can also be bounded because we might want to limit our font size to something, for example, at least 12, at most 20. So this increment and decrement will always stay in this range. Another one that I didn't showcase before is an enum length. Enums in Dart allow you to have a specific set of values and only those values. This is pretty much the same idea. In many apps, there are certain settings that can be only one of the few values. For example, a language. An app might support Polish, English, and French, and this class allows you to switch between those three values and nothing else. You can cycle between them, you can set to a specific one, but it can never go outside of this range of allowed values. And then the last helper is the list length, which allows us to manage an entire list of objects, while also with the method at index, it allows us to manage a specific item on a specific position in the list. This is useful for when a user has a list of books and they want to edit a specific book. They don't really care what happens with the other books when they're editing that one book, and that's what this object is for. It just skips through everything that's around it and only manages that one specific item in that specific list. So putting it all together in a UI, it might look something like this, where Boolean properties are toggles, checkboxes. Scaling can go up and down. Numerical length is kind of like a stepper. Enums are very easily represented with segmented controls, drop-downs, lists of radio buttons are also an option. And the list length is kind of the most generic because it allows us to modify the items further. It doesn't really specify what those items are, but you can still edit them independently. and manage them one by one. But I've shown you some pieces of code, some mocked up UI, but how do I actually connect the code to the UI so that everything connects automatically, because that's what I really want. And all that's needed is just one line in the build method. It's a hook that is also part of this package, and we developed specifically for these lenses. And it does a lot of things under the hood, but on the outside, it just provides us with get and set, because that's really what I want to do in my build methods. For example, here I can create a switch with just adding one line of code. I have everything to implement this switch. I can read what the current value should be, what should happen if I click on that switch, and if I do happen to click on that switch, the value will change automatically, because under the hood, somewhere deep down, that one method highlighted in yellow listens to the block, listens to the changes of that value, and gives me the new and fresh value. So those are the advantages. Aside from automatically rebuilding the widget, because Flutter should automatically detect that. It can also detect, for example, that it's a Boolean or a number. So it gives me, besides of just get and set, it detects, okay, it's a number, so I will give you also increment and decrement. And another advantage, which I think is actually the most important feature and the meaning behind such lenses, is that such objects provide me with all the methods that I need to manage a value, but only that. If you have a block with 1,000 properties, in one specific widget, I just want to have access to one value and be able to set that one value. I don't want to have to read the entire block. I don't want to have to set the entire state, because I don't really need to, and I shouldn't be allowed to even. All I have to do is just set the new value. Okay, it might look okay, might sound fun, but when to use it and when not to use it, because even though it's a great tool, it's not for every use case, and certain things, certain blocks are just better off doing without such inventions. So when to use our new package? For long lists of properties where the user might want to manage them one by one. The prime example is settings, user settings, app preferences, things like local, font size, theme mode, some kind of search history even, a list of favorites, sort preferences, other accessibility options, UI parameters, and so on. Because again, if I have a switch, I don't want to know all the settings. I just want to know if the dark mode is on. Another use case, which might be more business oriented, is for multi-step forms. For example, when you order some food online, you go through a couple steps in the process. You select what items you want to eat, how many of those items you want to eat. You have to enter your address, you want to add some notes, you want to select the delivery time, and so on. And on each screen in that process, you only really care about some subset of those properties. For example, if you have a screen with adding a note, you should only really care about setting and getting that note. And that's what lenses are really useful for. They allow me to modify the entire order, but locally I just can do node get and node set, and everything around it updates automatically. So those are the two use cases where it is useful. So when it is not useful, for types and states that have many different cases, and each case is pretty small, because there's not really an opportunity to modify a part of that state. You just have to create a new object that says initial or loading or loaded. This is also a very common use case for block when you want to fetch stuff from the server or update something on that server. You might go through all those states. But don't worry, lenses can still be used for other classes in your app. So far, I've been talking about block all the time. What if you don't use block? Because not everyone uses block, not everyone likes block. Luckily, the package is separated into sub-packages. Some of them are library agnostic. It doesn't matter if you don't use block, you just don't import the library that uses block. There's a base package that is completely oblivious to any specific state management solutions. If you use MobX, you can create simple bindings for MobX. If you use RiverPod, you can create simple bindings for RiverPod. If you use some other, maybe your own state management solutions, they can still be used just as easily with blocks. These lenses can also be used for one-off random applications if you just want to put together a getter and a setter. Like here, it's called custom lens. Here it's called custom lens, which just provides and redirects a getter and setter. It might not look like much. It probably looks like boilerplate around just having two parameters, getter and setter. But it's very useful in cases where you have custom widgets that can take just a lens, and they don't really have to care about that someone might pass a different value and then forget to update it automatically and correctly. This lens ensures that the user of our package will also always pass around those two functions, and they will be consistent. You can try it out. As we mentioned, it's on pub since like 3 hours ago. As a bonus and kind of a preview, it comes with macros, which is an up-and-coming feature in Dart. It's still very experimental and very flaky, so don't be surprised if your analyzer goes out the window when you import this package. But nevertheless, check it out, give us a star, try it out in your projects, and give us feedback on what else it might be used for, or what other features you might want to see in that package. Thank you.
Right. Do you have any questions? Okay.
Thanks a lot. A really cool idea. One thing that I wanted to ask, which is I think I can see that in the README of the package, and I think I missed that or it wasn't in the presentation, is that how do you actually integrate the lens with the block or the qubit? I can see this in the README, but I think it might be useful to show.
Yeah, so for example, this is one of the implementations called custom lens, but in the block, specifically for blocks, it actually makes use of the fact that we pass just a block instance, and then from that place, we just do everything on that block, but it happens under the hood. So
but yeah, just wanted to clarify, because I can see that these are essentially every lens, let's say your setting, is a property on a qubit, and then
yes.
it accesses the state of this qubit.
Yes.
So essentially, if you want to add 10 properties of you have 10 properties in your state, you will have 10 fields on the qubit.
Yes, and that's why I started developing the macros, because it's very tedious and it's a lot of boilerplate. And the macros actually allow you to just type add make lenses, and all those properties in that qubit will get generated automatically from what's in the state. But until we have stable macros, we do either have to write it out manually, or just you can create them on the fly as you need. If you don't want to pollute your qubit with a lot of properties that span dozens of lines, you can just create those objects wherever you need.
Yeah, all right. Looking forward to the macros then. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Yes.
Hi. I'm not sure if I understood this properly, but in the UI code that you showed, there was no block builder.
Exactly, and that's kind of the power of this utility. This use settings. It's a one method, but it does a lot under the hood, including starting to listen on the state. So it uses the stream of the qubit, and if something happens, it subscribes to this state and rebuilds the widget.
Okay, so if I'm only listening, for example, here to the dark mode, if the scaling changed, sorry, the widget will not get rebuilt?
No.
Okay.
It filters out to only that one property.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of context select, but you get both get and set, because with context select you just get the value itself with no way of setting it. You have to get the block separately and invoke something on that block. But with this lens, it subscribes to the changes of that one specific property, and also allows you to get and set the current value.
Okay, I'm coming. In the meantime, one question: does this hook use settings in the package also, or is it only with this use case?
Specifically, use settings is not in the package because it assumes that there's a settings qubit, but there is a more generic hook under the hood that you can use for any qubit in your application, and it will work the same way. If you have your own settings qubit, you can create this same hook with just passing a different class of the qubit.
Thank you for your presentation and publishing the package. Two questions, actually. First one is because you mentioned that sometimes we don't need hold the state, and it should be like that. Question, did you check the app performance or memory usage? Do we have any improvement here?
I haven't, because this whole idea came from the app we are developing, and we are already have a lot of settings on, and we didn't really notice any property drops, because it still rebuilds the same number of times. Because if a property changes, if dark mode changes, it will rebuild when dark mode changes, but when everything changes, it still rebuilds just the same. It's just more granular in that it allows you to also, for one specific widget, it allows you to listen less, basically.
Okay. So the performance is similar.
Yeah, it doesn't really have much impact on the on performance.
Thank you.
Actually.
And second brief question is because these are pretty easy examples. How about working with streams? For example, user action has to be sent by stream. So it's not set or get. How we do it with functions?
Yeah. You can have custom integrations. This custom lens can also, instead of just passing a getter and setter, you can create a similar class that uses a stream or like a sink and a stream, and it adds to that sink and reads from the stream. Unless you want to have a stream of loading initial, or is that? Because for those states, the lenses are not really useful. I'll admit that. It's just it's not what this whole architecture makes it easier. No.
Okay, that's what I was asking about. Thank you.
Thanks. I saw some hands. Okay, we can start from here. We have a lot of time for questions, I think, because we have a break after that.
You have already mentioned that it was used in production code. So how battle tested is this? Because this was published 3 hours ago.
Yes, because it was published very recently because it was basically touched up and made into a specific package, because before we were just using that in our own code. But it is pretty much tested thoroughly, because it's also a very thin wrapper around setting and getting the state. But yeah, as I said, we have tried it out for months basically, and it seems to work as we expect it to work.
So, for instance, how many apps did you use it in?
Well, one, because that's the one I'm working on, and other apps didn't really have an opportunity to try out all those goodies.
Okay, but it works in that one.
Yeah.
Okay, who's the next one? Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. I would like to ask about the method next invoked on enum. How the order of enum entities is preserved?
The object holds a list of values, and it doesn't change throughout. So there is one specific order. It's customizable because you can provide any list of values you want. For example, when you want to have a lens for a locale, you might want to use the generated list of available locales for those values, and it will cycle through all available locales in your app in one specific order that's in the list.
Okay, I can see you.
Hello, my name is Vitaly. I have a question about life cycle. When we work with block or qubit, just before some asynchronous operation on state of widget, yeah, we can check if this block is, if we catch the reference to it, if it is closed, yeah, and if it is closed, just cancel this operation, do not change anything anymore. Screen can be closed, block can be destroyed, right? In this case, using these lenses, how to check if it is still available to change?
So on the surface, it doesn't provide such a feature, but we actually have the way we work with blocks in our app. We actually do this under the hood in that lens. We just check if it's closed, then do nothing, and if it's still open, we can emit. So it's not available to the end user to check if this lens will do something, but underneath it still checks if the operation is still correct.
So it's on the block integration, does it?
Yes.
Okay.
The package for block integration specific.
Can you hand it over?
Yes, I just have a quick question. How long did it take you to create this or start implementing it into your applications, and what problems did you face while trying to implement this or making it fully functional?
As for problems with implementing, there were certain non-obvious things about generics and types, because the hook use settings that we have has a lot of generic parameters, and sometimes Dart just didn't want to guess them the way we wanted it to guess, but it's doable, and it works automatically right now, and it's hard for me to say how long it took because it evolved over time. We just started with get and set, which was very easy and simple to do, but then we noticed that very often we we have a reference to a list, and then we just set one specific item on that list. So that's why we developed the at index method to make this specific use case easier. Then some weeks passed, and then we noticed that we have a new component in the app that's useful for cycling through available values. That's why we added the next method just for this use case. So it was spread over months, but all in all, it was fairly simple to write.
Any more questions? Okay, I can see you. I can just start here.
Firstly, thank you for your presentation. And I have just a small and quick question. So why decided not to go with copy with pattern from block? Is it like much more harder?
We started developing this specific pattern because, well, the primary reason was because I wanted to. Because I just wanted to have a simple way of separating properties of one big setting state, and I thought to myself, why not try implementing lenses? And I started with just get and set, as I said, and then that's what it evolved into. But we started the app just using regular blocks and doing our regular updates. But then, as it evolved and as the settings grew, I just saw the need to kind of manage it differently.
Okay, so thank you for the talk. I have two questions. So for the first one, as I understood correctly, this block lens is basically the context dot select on steroids plus the ability to mutate the state actually using these helper methods for this lens, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So are you maybe able to show us how does the implementing it on the qubit side look like? What do we actually do on the qubit or in the block? Could we see it on the screen maybe?
Okay. Let me find a workable example. No, I'm not brave enough to do live coding. This is actually from the implementation of that package, but it does showcase how to connect with the block. Underneath, it does as yeah, I guess I could. Yeah, but it does what someone asked. It checks if it's actually closed, if the emit would be invalid. It also ignores a couple of warnings because emit is protected, but whatever. But underneath, it just actually safely emits the new state. And this is the entire implementation of the basic block lens. You just have to give it a block and how to get a value from that state and how you want to update the state with the new value. And from that place on, everything else gets implemented based on this class, which is basically just redirecting properties to their fields.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. I think we owe Piotr another round of applause after answering all those questions.